Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoilery gush for The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty. As I said, this video will have spoilers in it, so if you have not read this book, go and check out my spoiler-free review, which is linked on the screen. This was such a satisfying conclusion for me, and I'm a little bummed because it took me about 20 days to read this because I started this right when I started moving, and so like 3 weeks of just having a lot to do outside of being able to sit down and read made this so that I read this way slower than I would have if I actually have had the time to sit with it. But I think that was also really satisfying too, because part of me like just didn't want this to end. So it's kind of nice that I had more time in this world than I maybe would have if I would have been reading it during a not really busy time in my life. But this was such a good wrap up. Oh, this was such a good finale. I mostly just want to use this time to talk about like our characters and things, but I will say world building wise, it was really cool to see like particularly the Married. We saw a little bit of the Perrys too, but the Married and like Sobek and the Nile and like all the stuff with Ali and like going through the waters and Tiamat and like all that was so good and so atmospheric, and like I could picture it like a movie. It was so cool. That was one of the highlights of this book. I mean, there was so much that was good about it, but like that was really, really good. And I really liked that like element, and Ali being brought in is like, okay, he's like fully changed now, and just that dynamic there of him finding a place fully in sort of like that world, but then missing the like David Jin world, you know, like he can never get his fire back and stuff, and just like the bittersweetness of that. I think the bittersweetness of this left everything, and that was like the theme of this book, was really satisfying to me. I know not everyone necessarily likes sort of those like bittersweet endings, but like I thought everything that happened to the characters in here was so earned and felt so right, and the resolutions here felt just so right. So we talked about Ali and his sacrifice. I also want to talk about Dara, the war criminal. Oh man, he went through it so much, and I do feel like it took a little bit longer than I would have liked for him to like fully get like, dude, like the Nahids are like never gonna be good for you, good to be around or whatever, and like when he almost, you know, he basically got enslaved again and all that, oh my god, like so awful, and him being forced to be a weapon over and over, like that being his theme. But now finally his resolution was he's back to being what he was sort of in book 2, and he is gonna go find all of the Deva slaves and Jinn slaves that the Ifrit took. He's gonna use his millennia that he's gonna be alive to do that. He's no longer a weapon. Like he's doing that, and he's going on this like quest, and because of that he has to be separated from Daevabad and separated from Nari. And it's just like, oh man, that was so satisfying to me. Like the differences in her dynamics with him and Ali, I really liked, because it kind of showed even at the end like that there's a lot of love between her and Dara, but it was ultimately like we could never be together because of all the shit that's happened. And like he can't be a part of like Daevabad's world because of everything, and they can't be together, but there's still a lot of loss there. And like at the end when he was like, you know, should I have just left you there? You know, like, I'm so sorry this happened. And she's like, I would have taken your hand 1,000 times. Like, oh my God. And just like Daevabad is her home, but there's also that loss that she's never going to see him. And when they kind of talk about how like, tell your children to look in the cave for like the relics and stuff, it's like, there's just this understanding that they're never gonna see each other again, and like she's gonna die, and oh man, just wrenching at the heart. I also really like the dynamic that is like very different between her and Ali. I will say I wish, and I was thinking that I was gonna like sort of ship them more, but I think the way that it was written made it so that I couldn't really like get behind that, which is also fine because this wasn't like a romance series or anything. But it's always said like they call each other like my friend, and like even though there's this understanding that there might be something deeper there, like it can't quite be there yet. And she even says at the end where she's like, I'm letting this sort of like gently, like I'm letting myself open up to this and be a little bit more vulnerable. So she wasn't quite there yet, but I would have liked to like get to see them a little bit more together. Like we have that moment where they like are making out right before she has to cut the ring out of his heart. And I just wish there would have been more like feeling for me there than there ended up being. But I also didn't need that from this series at all. I like that like she ended up with the ring. Did not expect that. Like I thought she was gonna have to like kill Dara. I don't know who I was really thinking would take the ring, but like I just really didn't think it was gonna be her. But then like her doing that, and like Dara ultimately being the one to like kill her mother, who wasn't her mother, who was her aunt. I did not see that coming at all, because I was sitting here being like, how did she like have this happen? It just doesn't really seem with her character, like with the mom. And then when it's like, she was the brothers, like Rustum's, and like he was into like some of the nature magic and where she sat in the orange grove, and then she found The only time that I cried during this book, because I don't cry in books often, but the only time that I cried was like when she found out like her mom was Egyptian. That was all the stuff with her mother, because I didn't think that was her mom that she was with that whole time when she was having those little flashbacks. That was her mom. And then the Egyptian cook who was always doing nice things for her was her grandpa. Oh my God, I lost it. I was like, the whole time, and he like knew, but he like couldn't approach her. Oh my God, that perfect. And I still appreciate that like Jamshid still like calls her sister and stuff. Like they have their little like bond. And I'm just so happy that Nari like has a place, and she just wants, this whole time she's wanted to be a doctor, wanted to be a healer. So like she has that place, that's her job. She's not doing the politics stuff. Ali's gonna like try to, you know, create this like better world with politics and stuff. Like Matinder and Jamshid are like living together and like living their best life. Like it's just, everybody had an ending that was really satisfying. And I deeply appreciate that. And it still is left that like no one group of people is like in the right or whatever, besides like sort of our main characters, but even they have flaws. And I just really like that that was the line that was told the entire time, because I think that's really difficult to do as a writer, and I think she did it really well. So I don't know if we're ever gonna have any more in this. I know that there's a short story collection that I do plan on reading, when I usually don't plan on reading short story collections, but I will here because I feel like there's so much for this world that you can still explore. I don't know if she'll ever return to this world. I think there's a lot that can still be done there. I think it's really interesting. But yeah, I loved this. It's one of my favorite series. I now plan to add to my book sleeve with something here, but I just don't know what to do, because a relic doesn't feel right, or like the ring, that's a slave ring, doesn't really feel right. Like I don't know what I would do for like the symbolism for this, but it's definitely a favorite series and will go on my arm somewhere. Yeah, comment below, let me know all of your thoughts on Empire of Gold. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.